Please welcome Michael Biltz, Managing Director of Accenture Technology Vision.
We're going to talk a little bit about technology, and specifically the massive amount of change that we're all going through right now, driven by technology. So what does that mean? To Accenture, it really means that we have to recognize that about a quarter of all of the services that we provide our client is fundamentally based off of software, technology, and solutions that did not exist 5 years ago. And for our clients, it's the recognition that technology continues to be the catalyst that not only drives change and opportunity in their business, but is really a fundamental threat to their business. And you don't need anything more to look at than a statistic. So if you go back to the year 2000, you look at the Fortune 500 companies there, and what you'll realize is that now 52% of those companies no longer exist. That's the level of change that we're fundamentally talking about here. And nobody's going to be surprised of what's causing it. Social is changing the way that we communicate to each other, how we talk to our customers, how our customers interact with their families, friends, and loved ones. Mobility means that suddenly technology and digital access is everywhere. There's never a time that we're not with our phone, that we can't be reached out to, that we can't create some sort of experience for us. Cloud is changing how we build all of our systems, and analytics let us understand who we are, how we work, how our employees work, how our processes goes, what our customers are doing, what our customers want, and it gives us the ability to fundamentally change our companies using better decision making. But I want you guys to think about these technologies a little bit differently. Individually, each of these things represents an opportunity, a way to better yourself, create a new service, or even to change how you're doing something, do it a little more efficiently. But if you really take that one step back, what you realize is that in aggregate altogether, they represent a fundamental shift in what is possible today. And that's what companies are dealing with. Companies aren't just dealing with how do I evolve to that next step. Rather, they're being asked to reimagine themselves that said, if I were to build my company today, how would I build it? What's the business model I would use? How would I sell my service? Would I sell services? How would I position myself, and what's the technology that I use to build and grab there? That's today. Now, problem is that even that's starting to change. Is that this push for companies to go digital, to essentially become digital businesses, that's what we're seeing now. Companies ingesting all of these new technologies, figuring out how they can start to use technology as a catalyst to drive themselves. But when you start to look 3 to 5 years, a little bit further out into the future, what we see is that it's not individual businesses anymore. Rather, it's the recognition that every business, in every industry, in every country is all going through this change at the same time. And as they're becoming digital and they're becoming fueled by technology, what's happening is that we're just now starting to create this hyper-connected world where businesses are all connected to each other. They're connected to their consumers in ways that we've never seen before. And now, as the Internet of Things is suddenly becoming bigger and bigger, is that you're starting to connect to every object. And out of this, we're just now starting to see the first inkling of these new digital ecosystems that are starting to arise. You see it within the healthcare space. Is that suddenly it's not just about how a hospital becomes digital, rather it's the how do I attack health by combining hospitals with pharmaceuticals, with your Fitbit that's sitting on your arm. How do I look at it in a broader scale? How do I start taking cities and looking beyond how I run my government websites and think about how do I manage traffic? How do I manage power? How do I use smart building? How do I use intelligent ways to design my cities to allow it to grow as my population and as my businesses change? And it's these ecosystems that we believe become the next wave of opportunities and the next wave of disruptions that every company is going to start to have to deal with. Now, the opportunity there is big. I mean, if you think about it, you take something like healthcare that says, if I can actually take health as a problem and really start to make differences, it's huge. But the downside, and maybe it's not even a downside, but it's the recognition that what you're now talking about is you're talking about fundamentally changing the ecosystem you work in. You're getting involved with new partners, and whether they're your consumers, startups, developers, other companies, in order to do new things. And more than that, your success is going to fundamentally depend not just on what you do, but the success of the whole ecosystem at large. And that's going to change how you deal with your partners, who you choose as your partners, how you deal with your consumers, how you compete, the services you have, and even some of the business models that you're going to be using or looking at using to run your business. And all of those things are starting to happen today. But it's that interrelationship that we think is kind of this big aha moment for companies to start to realize that says, it's now time for them to stop looking internally that says, how does big data change the way I work my company? And start looking externally that says, now that big data exists, now that these technology exists, how do I start to get myself involved with these broader ecosystems? Who are going to be my partners? And what's this future I'm going to start driving towards? And this is what we're terming the we economy. Now, with that, I often find that the easiest way to make these things real is to use some examples. So with that, I'm going to invite Ted up to join me here.
Ted Girdner with Vice President of Comcast Business for the California region. Excited to be here today, Michael. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Good to see you guys.
Please sit down. So let's start with a little bit of context.
Sure.
Your industry is obviously rapidly changing, just like everybody else's. What's really been the driving force and changes over the last few years that's changing Comcast?
So several things. I mean, if you look 5-10 years ago, I think we were competing for the next video household, the next internet connection, whatever it may be. And as you looked over the last 7-8 years, everybody started to be aware of the fact that, hey, this long tail was out here, as we've often referred to it, all these new technologies coming up, and the discussion was happening, who are we going to be competing against in the future? And obviously that's evolved dramatically in the last few years with the we economy, with the Internet of Things, to a world where you can't compete against that long tail. As I mentioned earlier, it's become the long nose, right? Since everybody can access it, we have the bandwidth out there in the marketplace for everybody to be able to access those applications directly. It's really, how do you capture it? How do you partner with that world to provide the ultimate user experience? And that's what Comcast is executing on every day right now, which is how do we create the user experience community that allows users most effectively take advantage of all of those applications to better their lives, better how they do business.
So let's start with internally for Comcast.
Sure.
Is that it's obviously a huge change for what you're doing. What's the change internally? What are you doing differently? How do you view yourself differently? Now that you're moving in these directions.
So I believe in the technology vision that you've put together for Accenture and for all of us. Thank you. You've talked about the platform, and really it's changed to taking a look at that user, what that user wants to consume, the experience, the day-to-day life that the user at the home or at the business wants to experience, and how do we tie that into our platform, which is the X1 home entertainment platform, tied with Xfinity Home Security and Control as well. And how do we bring individuals into that application, onto that platform? How do we bring businesses that are growing onto that platform to provide the latest and greatest in user experience to the marketplace? And ultimately, how power
Give us an
lasts.
example.
So right now, just a couple weeks ago at the cable show out in Chicago, we actually announced quite a few partnerships that are going to be part of that platform. So imagine a world of next year where you're driving home in your car, and with our partnership with Automatic, you have data analytics that are coming from that car back into the X1 platform, and ultimately telling your home and telling the Nest thermostat that you're 10 minutes away from home, so it sets the temperature where you want it to be when you get to the house. telling the August smart lock system when you're pulling around the last corner to unlock the doors so you're able to get into the house. And ultimately talking to the Lutron lighting system and making sure the lights are set appropriately for how you want to come into the house. So you can't do it alone. Obviously, we're not going to be out there building every one of those applications. To the point on the We economy, it takes an army. And it's about creating a platform that brings user experience together on any device application that they want to use or consume those relationships through and that experience through to provide them what they're looking for in day-to-day life.
So platforms seem to be, I'm going to say, one of the new buzzwords.
You got it.
So let me start for the audience here. So define what you mean by platform.
So a platform is, it's moving it into the IP universe, so it's accessible to everyone. One of the other announcements we just made that's critical to this is it's no longer about just a proprietary product where you're developing new solutions. One of the things we announced was that we're creating a software integration kit that's going to be available to partners or potential partners so they can build on that platform. So it's basically creating a community that's no longer just about, hey, what can we do? Hey, but how can we harness the power of all technology company, all technology growth to support the end user experience?
So in the example that you used, you're essentially describing a platform for the connected home, I think,
That's correct.
in that particular example. So what does that mean for you? Is that you've suddenly almost become an ecosystem builder? Is that you're trying to, how do you start to interact with other folks? How do you get other companies involved, developers involved, so that it actually really kind of hits and starts up?
Great question. If you take a look at, once again, the history, it was all, how do we get more speed? And certainly we still do that as a matter of course, part of the day-to-day focus of the business for many reasons. All of these new connected applications, interconnections in businesses, and every business taking advantage of the Internet of Things and these partnerships is driving that need for more speed, the need for better applications, so on and so forth. But the focus on the ecosystem is, to some extent, a matter of survival, which is, and I think, you don't like to say it that way, but ultimately, there is an environment out there now where folks can go get it their own. They would prefer not to piecemeal it together, but if we don't deliver it to them and provide that user experience, hey, they will find ways to do it, or others will come find ways to do it. So I think you say in your research, user experience is job one right now. And we wake up every day going, hey, what do we need to do? Who do we need to talk to? Bringing customers in for focus groups, so on and so forth. What can we do to change their lives? And do the stuff that they're already doing today, but make it easier. And that applies both to the home situation, as well as with government, medical, education, and pretty much every vertical industry out there.
So talk about one or two of the verticals, because one of the things that we see pretty often is that as people start to rethink what they're doing, is that they end up in places they never expected.
You got it.
So walk through a little bit of one of the verticals that you guys didn't expect to, and kind of what the role you're playing in there is.
That sounds great, Michael. So as I said, we're focused internally on the ecosystem for the home, basically all of us out there in the market as we consume services. The other area that we spend a lot of time thinking right now related to this topic is just building out infrastructure. And we're doing 1,000+ simultaneous construction jobs in Northern California right now, and it's all based on demand in the marketplace. We're seeing 50% increase in capacity in the market, or bandwidth demand in the marketplace on an annual basis, which is massive pace, and it's accelerating. And just this year, we've seen 10 times the requests for 10 gigabit connections than for Ethernet services with low latency, high capacity, than we saw 2 years ago. So the demand's going up dramatically. And the big drivers are really threefold. One is the move to the cloud. I think if you look 3, 4, 5 years back, we were in a position where folks were debating, hey, do I move to the cloud? Now we're in a position where they're going, hey, in what priority do I move all my internal applications to the cloud? Because if I don't, I can't keep up with this pace of innovation that's out there in the marketplace. The second thing driving it is the quality of experience that users are looking for in the business community and in the home community, and in some cases they need. So we talk about a couple of applications. One, telepresence in the hospitals, where, hey, maybe I don't have the best heart surgeon in my local hospital, or he's on vacation this week, but with HD video streaming applications, we can bring in a heart surgeon from Baltimore and have them plug in, view the surgery, see what's going on, provide advice, so on and so forth. But you need incredibly high quality video to do that. So just the move to HD and the eventual move to the 4G TVs and things along those lines are driving tremendously high use of bandwidth. If you go to education, we talked about distant learning has been a buzzword for a long, long time. But now you're not talking about just how does somebody remotely take a class. You're talking about how do, for underserved schools or subjects that you don't see a lot of people at a given school take, let's say it's a foreign language or whatever it might be, you can now have remote teaching where you have 1 or 2 students from every school on an HD platform that's carrying 10 HD feeds from multiple schools, as well as voice over IP capabilities, so that they can treat it just like an in-person classroom experience. And then you add to it on the big data front. We're now at every school, every university, college campuses, we're now capturing streaming video from cameras to be aware of what's going on the campus, aware of any incidents, so on and so forth on a day-to-day basis. And that's typically kept for up to a month. There's now more IP camera traffic for video out there in the marketplace for the first time ever than there is TV video streams. So if you think about that, the amount of data you have to be able to store and handle is off the charts.
So you've painted the, I'm going to say, the rosy picture. You
got it.
What we learned. Talk to me a little bit about the challenges. It seems that bandwidth, people are always demanding more. There's lots of push from startups, et cetera, to try a lot of these internet things. What are the roadblocks? What are the things that are keeping the Kaisers of the world from pushing into these things, from our school systems and our government from diving headlong?
Fascinating question. I think hit that on 2 fronts. From an ecosystem standpoint, with all these companies, Comcast included, looking at how do we provide an ecosystem for our end users in both the business and residential space, there's a lot of things to consider. Everybody has spent and invested within our businesses tremendous amounts of money over the last several decades in how do we secure our network? How do we secure customer data and maintain privacy? How do we provide transparency out to the marketplace? If you look at the new environment and you think about back to a connected home application, our partnership with Skybell integrated doorbells. Hey, now you're going to be in a position where if somebody rings the doorbell, it automatically keys a video camera to be able to video what's going on the front porch. And when you do that, though, now you're thinking about 11 partners or 15 partners in this ecosystem, and how do I maintain security of that customer or that end user's video feed, of the information I gather from those customers? How do I have the permission to share enough of that information to be able to drive excellent applications for the home or business, but at the same token, protect that data in a way that we're A, required to, and B, is the right thing to do out there in the marketplace. And then the third element that's challenging is this big data application, which is, if you look at the market right now, just at Comcast, we're transacting over a billion interactions a day, just with how people consume video, how people consume home security, how they do their user interactions with their thermostats and the other devices they can control. And how do you process that data? How do you transmit that data to be able to analyze it and feed back and provide a better customer experience?
So let me ask something, and maybe this is I'm going to say mildly controversial, but says, you touched on both privacy and security.
Sure.
And I know that both happen to be extraordinarily hot topics right now. But the reality is that when you actually look at the negatives of when Sony had their breach, when Target, used big data and had some very questionable results, is that they all turned into big splashes, but the reality is it didn't actually seem to result in any fines. Most of their stock prices, almost immediately went back up to where they were. Is how big of an impediment is that? Is how real, are some of these risks that you're looking at as you dive into these new areas?
I think it's a great question, and I don't know all the answers on this topic, of course. But I think it's a very real impediment because ultimately it comes down to trust. And there's going to be multiple providers out there, cable industry, telecom industry, web presences, so on and so forth, that are going to be offering services to manage user experience going forward. And it's really going to be the companies that deliver that trust constantly and maintain it. I think your research actually indicates that hey, if customers even see you sharing their data and using it for other purposes, the level of trust literally drops in half almost on the first instant. So it's going to be critical to maintain that trust, and it's going to be that user relationship and really seeing a partnership with the end customer that's really going to drive the future economy and growth of companies going forward.
So we've got about a minute left, so let me ask one last question, and I think that's with technology changing so quickly, so rapidly, what's the role of government and regulation as you're very boldly pushing into uncharted territories? How does the relationship with the government fit in? How does the relationship with the public work?
Great question, and I think you're setting me up here. And I think relative to the mission of the Bay Area Council as well, which is how do we provide a great infrastructure within the Bay Area? How do we provide a great infrastructure within California that supports the mission we're all out there to accomplish, which is continuing to have this as the technology hub of the universe, and we hope, and making sure that continues to thrive. And I think what we all need to look at is how do we collectively work together to make sure we're getting infrastructure everywhere where it belongs. We literally are building nonstop right now to be able to take care of the needs of businesses, government, education, K through 12 in the marketplace. There's not enough contractor resources to go around. How do we make it easier from a permitting standpoint, from a opening right-of-way standpoint, working with local governments to really make this fly and continue to make California the best place in the world to do business.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Michael.
And then I'll throw in one plug. If you guys want more information about the We economy or this discussion or anything else, please go to Accenture.com Technology Vision, and we've got a lengthy 100-page report that most of you won't read, but you can hand it to somebody below you who will. But thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Michael.